And it's in FNAF 3. After FNAF 3's ending, when we learned about the fire, we thought that was it. We, for at least, 20 seconds until people started brightening the image of the final screen, which is just, classic FNAF by now. And then that's when we saw Springtrap sitting in the shadows behind the stuffed animal that was in the image of the news article about the fire. Now, I have no idea how the photographer didn't see that, or if William has the news outlets working for him too, or whatever, but this is absolutely terrifying. And it's really what started us down the rabbit hole of the several hoops that we would have to jump through to find more clues and lore. Brightening this one image made us have to comb through the files of mobile games. Anyway, this image set us on a path to thinking that William survived the fire and that this would not be the last FNAF game. I don't know if this was supposed to be, or if this was just an Easter egg. If it was meant to allow for more games in the series, if Scott wanted to, because originally he wanted to end it with FNAF 3, but hey, either way, it happened, and here we are, 6 games and 15 books later. And at 9, Help Wanted ending. The final minigame of Help Wanted is Pizza Party, where you have to navigate your way through the various rooms of the pizzerias to get to your pizza party. The whole time, you're having to avoid animatronics that will sometimes jump scare you, sometimes not. But the real horror comes from when you get to your own party. It wasn't thrown by your friends, it wasn't thrown by your family, it was thrown by Glitch Trap. That's right, Dio Fluffy in the back room. After seeing the ruined bodies of Chica and Bonnie, Glitch Trap appears from behind a curtain. Your final moment is spent walking through that curtain as the screen goes black. Next thing you know, you're on stage with a microphone in your hand. That's right, you've been stuffed. Put in a Freddy suit by none other than William Afton himself, but how? He wasn't supposed to be in the game, right? He was some code that got scanned in by accident. Well, doesn't matter now. That's one of the scariest moments of any game though. You experiencing what every child has once William has shown them where the other pizzas are kept. Just, Jesus, I don't even, it gives me chills, especially with that dancing at the end that makes it worse. And it ain't the first one. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological issues that they could use to predict their next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst way possible. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, okay? I'm not a dad, I think, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I wouldn't just be burning down restaurants in an attempt to send William to hell. I would be doing that myself, an express route right downstairs. And it's 7, Dream Theory. The actual concept of dream theory is nothing new to any series, really. The idea that everything we've seen could just be a dream is possible with any form of media. But when it comes to FNAF, this idea made a lot of people upset. And I guess, that's understandable. With everything being a dream, it in essence makes the lore of the series worthless. So the hours and hours that people spent trying to work it out would be pointless if this was true. However, if this was the intention, we never knew, since in FNAF 4's ending we see a locked box with the now infamous line of, perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. And that for now has been around 6 years. Currently, according to Scott, from what I've seen, nobody has solved FNAF 4 yet. But then again, I don't think that Scott knows who we are, so maybe I have and he just doesn't know it. But with the game surrounding a kid in a coma who's experiencing nightmares after being chomped on by a seriously overpowered animatronic jaw, I think us getting the idea that this could be indicating everything was a dream is honestly a little par for the course at this point. We were so invested that we actually started scanning the source code of websites and found a real-world pizzeria with coordinates thanks to multiple 8s and 7s that were hidden around the source code. I still don't know if that was accidental or not. And at 6, FNAF 6. William surviving the FNAF 6 fire was much harder to believe when it came to it, at least before Bunny Call was released. However, some fans seem to note that during the final cutscene of FNAF 6 during Henry's speech, while the other animatronics were engulfed by flames, Scrap Trap was ahead of them. This was especially hard to believe given that we thought Ultimate Custom Night took place in Hell, which is really impossible to get to unless you die. Well, me being the exception. I party with Satan regularly. He can't hold his liquor. It's kind of weird. I don't understand it. Either way, this was all proven to be true when Bunny Call was released and William was in the hospital in the man in room 1280. However, this eventually was proven also not to be the case because it's FNAF. I gotta say, that's the biggest troll in the entire series. Or at least one of the biggest trolls. Come on, Scott, really? You kill him off only to make him alive in the books, and then kill him off in that same story, and then you prove that he's alive again in Security Breach? Or maybe he isn't even alive anymore and is just a possessed animatronic? Who knows at this point? Not even Scott, not even Steel Wool, not even whoever's taken over next. Halfway through into number 5, post-game. Honestly, from an emotional and mental health standpoint, the FNAF security breach post-game is the scariest thing of all. The fact that you are unable to save is absolutely atrocious, and like, I get why it would be a thing, but holy crap. Like, now that we have this insane ability to see where everything is, including secret discs that can only spawn in when we're looking at them, we are now unable to save. If you close your game, you lose everything. You either do it all at once or not at all, and honestly, that's some of the scariest damn shit ever. I hate having my progress be regressed. Like, it feels like I'm wasting my time, and I hate wasting my time. So in addition to being a terrible game mechanic, I hate the fact that everything I can do can be lost. Like it never happened. And that to me is one of the scariest things. But I know it's not scary in a more common sense, so I'm only putting it at number 5. But please, Steel Wool, if you're somehow watching this, even though I tagged you on my Instagram story and you never saw it, please, for the love of God, fix this in an update. Allow us to like enable post-game saving in the settings or something so that it's an option. Because like it would be really useful if it was. Or like enable it like every real world hour. Like after an hour the save stations are active for like 2 minutes, so we need to find one fast or something. Please. Anything. And at 4, Assimilate. The ending of FNAF VR, like the real ending where you fight Glitch Trap, is certainly a scary moment. It also just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy just pops into your VR headset, then takes over your body so that you end up killing for him. It's kind of messed up. And actually not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. She ends up knowing what's going on too. Like she actively talks in hushed tones and about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like what the hell is the dynamic here? And by she and her, I mean Vanny, obviously. I mean, like, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then, like, causing them to make a rabbit costume because you're still kinky furry is a whole other set of equations. I don't even want to talk about how messed up that is. She knows there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William's been saying in her head, and she knows what's going on. Ah, man, like, well, being willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, even though you know that William's gonna take over, that's that. Man, you really need a therapist. So does William, honestly. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, FNAF 1's release. Let's face it, without the release of the first game, none of this would have been possible, and I think that's pretty obvious, which makes it the most important moment of all time. However, it's not the biggest moment of all time, so it's only gonna get number 3. But on that faithful day of August 8th, 2014, the world was changed, and a path was set for everyone who would talk about this series. If I only knew that this simple horror game would come to dominate my life 6 years later. We all have fond memories with FNAF, so please share your favorite FNAF moments or moments just in general with FNAF in the comments. The release of the first game though was the catalyst for everything else, so it is absolutely the most important moment in the series, as well as in Scott's game design career. After everything seemingly flopping like Chipper and Sons Lumber Co., where the best character of Coffee comes from, this one game changed everything and made waves for the indie horror scene as a whole. Without the success of FNAF, we wouldn't have gotten Poppy Playtime, surely. But ultimately, in number 2, The Blob. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things. After making your way into Burntrap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using the 3 monitors to keep burning him. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come after Gregory and use the doors to temporarily lock them out if they can. When Springtrap is burned though, the blob, which has like that tentacle monster thing, will attack and make sure that he doesn't get free, which is really weird and horrifying considering how, you know, I don't know if he's dead. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and then sitting on a hill together, but the tentacle monster's identity was never revealed. But originally, after this game, the final Fazbear Frights book would have released, which would have showed us that the tentacle monster we would have been talking about is in fact Baby, or I guess Elizabeth Afton, or it is in the books. But I guess while they share similar elements, they aren't the same thing, because Baby's eyes are off, so it could be that the original 5 missing children are getting their revenge on Afton, since those could be the souls inside of Ennard, which would have been Molten Freddy, and that's seemingly the face that the blob is using, even though it's Funtime Freddy. But you know what? The only way to explain this series fully is to say that every game takes place in a different universe. Every game is separate from each other. That's the only way it works. And finally, and number 1, the spring locking. I believe we all know this story by now. Everything was going well at first, okay? The cops couldn't pin him down, and he was on his way to immortality. Well, technically he had it already thanks to the one you should not have killed, but once William discovered Remnant, however, he spiraled. He wanted to use it to fuel his life and truly make him immortal, so in an effort to study it further, William lures the possessed animatronics to the back room where they can't access it, and then he uses it to dismantle them, planning to melt them down into their endoskeletons to fuse that soul metal into his body. However, by doing this, he unknowingly releases the souls of the victims that he claimed however many years ago. I think it might have been like 2 or something, I don't know. Shocked from seeing his literal murder victims, he ends up fleeing into his spring bodysuit, which also makes him feel powerful. However, his haste coupled with the leaking room ended up causing the spring locks to fail, crushing him in torturous agony for the next 30 years. However, he didn't die from this, because as we learned in the Man in Room 1280, he was being kept alive by the spirit of yet another victim. So he's been living in agony for the past 30 years, and that makes him damn well deserving of the number 1 spot. Before you ask, Garvey isn't even a thing, okay? So like, I'm not gonna talk about Garvey. It's not even in the FNAF canon. Why are you asking me about it? Leave me alone. In at 10, 5:50 a.m. One of the scariest parts about this game is the odd time scaling. Without progressing the story, you could spend 8 hours in this game and it wouldn't even be 1 a.m. But after installing Roxy's eyes, it's suddenly 5:50 a.m. and you need to get out fast. Now, there are plenty of things that make this section scary. Firstly, you can no longer save, meaning if you die, you have to install Roxy's eyes again, which is already annoying enough. You also need to locate an exit, which in the case of the Pizzaplex can be a difficult task to say the least. And suddenly, the rules the game was operating on for the past 6 hours go out the window. It's not the top of the hour yet, but now the Moondrop animatronic is roaming and trying to get you. Again, despite it not being the top of the hour. And Freddy now seemingly has infinite battery. But the scariest thing about all of this is the time limit. Sure, I've spent 8 hours playing this game, but it's only been 6 in game. And now you tell me that I have 10 minutes in game, and it doesn't even give me 5 real world minutes to locate an exit in this goddamn maze? Yeah, time limits like that make everything more intense. In at 9, Phaser Blast. Do I love Phaser Blast? Yes. Would I play it all day if I could? Yes, probably. Do I want a VR version? Also yes, but that doesn't discount the fact that somehow Chica decides to drop in when you're in Phaser Blast, and I don't get why. Which honestly only ends up making this 10 times harder than it has to be, because now you can actually get killed instead of just losing the Phaser Blast game. When playing this the first time, I did not expect to see Chica, so seeing her definitely gave me quite a shock. And running around an enclosed space with a lunatic animatronic that is chasing after you when all you really want is to just get up close and snuggle in with those arms. I think it's safe to say with 100% certainty that this idea is terrifying. But at least you get to shoot things, which is something that I've been wanting from a FNAF game for ages. Being able to like shoot animatronics that actually have cursed my real life at this point. In at 8, Security Office. While FNAF 1's recreation may be terrifying, I think an even more terrifying moment takes place just after that, when you get caught by Vanessa and dragged into the security office when we wait for the police or our parents. But we escape, and seemingly nobody ever shows up. The police never do, and neither do our parents, so Vanessa clearly didn't call anyone. But like with the 5:50 a.m. thing, there is a time limit introduced very quickly here, because thanks to Vanessa locking us up, Vanny now knows where we are. So we are instantly introduced with another time limit, however this time, we're stuck in an office with seemingly no escape. So this ends up becoming worse than the last 10 minutes of the game in my mind. Especially because Vanny taunts us by waving outside of the door before coming inside and absolutely decking us. So if you're panicking, much like how Eddie VR did when he was playing, it's certainly going to be rough for you. Yeah, being trapped in the security office with Vanny on your tail, no thank you. 10 out of 10 would not do again unless I have to, which I might have to. And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was a really interesting turning point for the FNAF series. The original Afton storyline was at a close, and this game was the ultimate capstone to that, with some important lore hints in the form of voice lines that played when you get killed, which is good because it happens a lot. However, this game still fits into the FNAF story and serves as a link between the original story and the new one. The new story being Afton trying to escape the video game world he got himself locked in, or now being Burn Trap or whatever the hell he is. But we originally But we originally interpreted this game all wrong, since we initially thought that William was burning in hell this time, or stuck in purgatory. But as all Supernatural fans know, purgatory is just a giant forest where monsters kill each other for eternity. But in reality, this must just be what he's seeing in his charging station in the basement of the Pizzaplex, since honestly, that's really the only way that this makes sense. At least if it's still Afton. Eventually he wakes up, which is him beating 50-20 mode in fights against us, which results in him getting grabbed by the blob and maybe surviving, because we still don't know. And at 6, BB World. The various minigame arcade cabinets hidden around the map are actually sometimes playable, like the Balloon Boy World game we can find in the alcove behind the daycare, accessible through a secret poster door in the theater. But the actual game itself isn't all that scary. It's just like an infinite thing and it doesn't really have an ending, unless you get through one of the purple portals that you can find in the game. Going through one of these will instantly glitch out the BB World game, and if you stay in the line long enough, you'll eventually be floating over nothing, with the sun just staring at you until it fills the screen and then the game shuts off. I feel like there was at least intended to be some bigger mystery here, since this is hinted at throughout the lore bags, but perhaps it was cut or not completed, since we now know that the game was released unfinished. They could be saving it for DLC, or it could never really matter. But the whole glitched portion of the Balloon Boy game is seriously creepy, and I'm glad that I don't have to deal with it much. I mean, I want to get to the bottom of this if possible, so I do plan on playing through it. I just need to find the time to do so, and I only plan on doing it once. Halfway through into number 5, retirement. Scott Cawthon's retirement was actually pretty shocking, and while it may have been following controversy, according to Scott, it had nothing to do with the backlash he was getting over his political donations, which were partially made to anti-LGBTQ politicians, which many found offensive, given that a large portion of the FNAF fandom identifies as part of the LGBTQ+ community. However, he still stood by the fact that his retirement was not due to the controversy, and said it was really due to wanting more time with his family. Said he could make games for his kids, and even RPG games, even if he's horrible at them. His words, not mine. However, this is probably a hugely impactful moment, since after all, FNAF was Scott's series, and this left us wondering if Security Breach would even be released. But he assured us that FNAF would continue on, and now that Security Breach is out, Scott, I'm sure, is looking for a successor to the series amongst the people that he's actually worked with. It's not gonna be MatPat, it's not gonna be Daco or Markiplier. It's probably gonna be someone that he has worked with who knows the series well, like Andrea Wagner, co-author of the Fazbear Frights books, especially since they seem to be headed in that direction now with the introduction of the Blob and Security Breach. And at 4, Princess Quest. While Princess Quest may lead to the best and least disturbing ending of the game, forgetting about the fact that you go get ice cream with the woman who was trying to kill you for 6 hours, the actual games themselves are kinda scary. Like the Princess Quest minigames themselves are kinda spooky. You're alone in a dark room, hardly able to see around you, and then these possessed women rabbit things that are meant to represent Vanny come flying after you. In the first game, you have to run down this hallway, then come back up it on a platform, grab a key from a chest, then go all the way back down the platform so you can come back down the hall. But then, after you get the key, all of a sudden there are 10 of these Vanny knockoffs coming after you. It actually it made me jump a bit the first time I played it. Especially given that I have never gotten the chance to play a Princess Quest game before. It also crashed my game when I completed it, so I don't know what to make of that either. Getting close to the end in number 3, Burn Trap. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in Security Breach, named Burn Trap according to the game files. He only appears in the canon ending, which is the Afton ending, or the true ending, whatever you want to call it. This form is the result of Vanny downloading William's soul from the digital realm into an old hybrid abomination of an animatronic suit, endoskeleton, and the little remains of his corpse, which just seems to be an extremely burnt scrap trap animatronic. Hence the Burn Trap name. Burn Trap's new rotten form appears to be his old but modified, tattered, greenish brown spring Bonnie suit that has become even more severely withered, tattered, and burned because, it's been through 3 fires. With the whole entire lower jaw ripped out, revealing his skull covered in blood with some burnt flesh remaining and some metallic eyes and small pupils. The suit is missing fur with the exception of their chest, hips, legs, upper legs. The rest is extremely burnt. He's very charred. He's charcoal at this point. You can use him to forge a sword. His old endoskeleton has seemingly been replaced with the newer endoskeletons that the Glamrock animatronics have, and that makes him even taller and gives him sharp claws and fingers. So yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this is on this list. And ultimately, in at number 2, Music Man Chase. The Music Man Chase scene and the whole section that came before it with having to reboot the West Arcade is actually one of the coolest sections in the entire series, but also absolutely absolutely terrifying. Not only does it provide another Princess Quest arcade machine, but we also get to run through the hall while an obstacle course is being made right in front of us. There are various different paths that you can choose as well, as long as you're paying attention. Like at one point you can jump over a fallen shelf or run to the left and go around it, although that takes a bit longer. And I actually managed to do this on my first try. I was so far ahead that some obstacles didn't even fall in front of me, they were falling behind me. But somehow Music Man ended up catching me right before I got into the security office anyway, which made me absolutely furious. The complete BS of that moment aside, the next time I tried it, I ended up getting it right, so I think it's safe to say that the Music Man chase is pretty damn cool and horrific. And I mean, like, the giant Music Man spider, or DJ Music Man if you're lame, is also horrifying. Plus the fact that he crawls around on the walls and stuff, it makes this chilling. And finally, in at number 1, the true ending. The true endings is seemingly the scariest part, because it contains a load of the things mentioned above. This is unlocked by finding the secret elevator in the section down in Roxy's Raceway, and it's down the stairs, where next to where you find the test driver head. This requires your Freddy to have the Monty Claus and Chica's voice upgrade though, so you'll have to risk losing all your progress. But it does actually auto-save when you get down there, so there's at least that. But like, I don't know, I don't want to have to deal with Monty's boss battle in like one go. Cause like, that seems like it's impossible to do, and I chose to go Chica first, which seems like the easier thing to do, and well, I don't know. Whatever. Save states being disabled is horrible. Anyway, after making your way into Burn Trap's area, Freddy will start to be taken over by Burn Trap, and it's up to you as Gregory to defeat him by using the 3 monitors and pushing buttons to burn him, because you know that's worked every single other time we've tried it. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come for Gregory using the doors to temporarily lock them out, or like hiding when it comes to Roxy. When Burn Trap is finally burnt to death, when you finally defeat him, the blob, which was the tentacle monster ahead of time, will attack you, making sure that he doesn't get free. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and then sitting on a hill together, but the tentacle monster was never really identified, or like their identity was never revealed. But after this game, the Final Fazbear Frights book would have originally released, which would have showed us that the tentacle monster that we would have been talking about would in fact be Baby, or I guess Elizabeth Afton, even if they're using the Funtime Freddy face, which is a whole other can of worms. Because technically Molten Freddy wasn't using the Funtime Freddy face. Why was Funtime Freddy there? I don't know. Lore is the scariest thing of all. In its 7-year anniversary. This previous year, FNAF had its 7th anniversary, which is pretty significant because this year Skyrim also had its 10th anniversary, which is freaking absolutely nuts, because I think of Skyrim as like this behemoth of gaming that's defying the odds, and it has thanks to modding, but FNAF itself isn't much younger, at least as a series. Not many people still play the first game, but only a 3-year difference between them? That's kind of mind-blowing in my opinion. I didn't really think about that. And to think that this series, 7 years later, 9 full games, at least 2 spin-off games, 15 books, and a work-in-progress movie later, still going strong? Absolute madness. The FNAF fanverse of madness. Haha, yeah, that's the movie that's coming out. Boom! Just confirmed it. It's really a Joy of Creation-based movie. What, you thought it was gonna be Five Nights at Freddy's? Ha! Funny. Imagine if that was actually the case, though. Now that would be crazy. And a 9th soft reboot. The soft reboot the series is undergoing at the moment, and more so at the time of Help Wanted, was something that we hadn't really seen before, at least in the FNAF series, and seemingly started the trend of characters from games becoming sentient and trying to escape the confines of the game itself and escape into the real world that we see play out in the FNAF games after Afton becomes sentient code, and then like every other indie game, apparently. But even then, the next game seems to throw that idea away while keeping what happened in that game, or at least the mobile port of the game, canon with Princess Quest. The real issue comes from the next soft reboot they attempted to do in Security Breach, with Afton now having a physical form again, his death being a mystery, and the game setting up the next owner to go wherever they want. And while I do understand that, I wish that they could have just like set one path, you know? Or at least just killed William for us, permanently, clearly on screen. Scott, please. In a day game theory. Like it or not, love him or hate him, Matt Pat making his first FNAF game theory back in 2014 is certainly a huge moment for FNAF. While yes, FNAF did outvote Slenderman in his original poll about what episode he should cover next, this is where I, along with sure many other people, had found the series. Especially since I was just finishing up my first year of high school, hearing the details explained was certainly helpful for me understanding the series, because at that point, I wasn't really a super sleuth like I am now. And really, since I'm not a big fan of horror, it was my only exposure exposure to the game, aside from like Smosh games playing it, like the first few. But it's really in the game theories where the lore and puzzles shined, with the first FNAF theory having over 27 million views, and my sister constantly saying that she's going to rewatch all the theories so that she can understand what I'm talking about, even though that's probably way outdated at this point. This is where the FNAF audience grew exponentially, and really no other channel has been able to bring widespread awareness to an indie franchise like that from what I remember. I think that a lot of the success of FNAF can be dedicated to MatPat, but also just the game being interesting enough for MatPat to cover. While channels like Dawko and FNAF talk about FNAF more, those channels along with this one are more so for people who are already fans of the series. But that first FNAF theory, had it not have been made, I'm pretty sure would have changed everything. And it's 7, Blind Roxy. After stealing Roxy's eyes by absolutely smashing her head in with a go-kart, we think she's kinda done for. You know? She's on the ground, there's a go-kart on top of her, she has no eyes, you know? So it's reasonable to assume that she's been absolutely wrecked, but in fact, she hasn't. She just relies on her hearing to find you now. And the section right after we blind her and she wakes up is some of the most terrifying and annoying gameplay I've experienced. The sheer act of luring her to attack a door, but getting out of the way in time is annoying enough. Now add in fire to that she's able to walk through and you're not. Literally, like you cannot physically move through the fire. Like I figured that like Gregory would die or something if he tried, so I made an attempt to walk through the fire. Nothing. Turns out Gregory has some extremely precise self-preservation measures since he knows how close he can get to the fire without it so much as warming him. Like it's actually like a wall. You cannot walk through it. I guess that was probably the best way to go about this in like a game sense, but like why even have fire there if you're going to make it a wall? Still, that section, horrifying. And at 6, expanded lore. While looking for FNAF lore was originally a simple thing to do, ever since we were introduced to the purple guy, things got a little more complicated. I mean, like clicking on a secret action figure on your desk, alright. Punching a phone number into wall tiles? That seems absolutely bonkers. And yes, Chris, that's actually a thing they had to do in FNAF 3. But then it got even more intense, with us starting to check the source code of Scott's website, the files for the games. We had to reconstruct original file names to get Vanny's name before the game come out by opening image teasers as text documents, and more. All of that, and we still haven't figured out FNAF 4? Really? What the hell's wrong with us? This expanding lore, or I guess the expansion of ways we found the lore of the series, was incredibly important to the actual success of the series. It was really what kept the series going, and what made so many people love to hate and hate to love talking about it. It's like the world's longest ARG. The complexity of the story, I'm sure, was a result of this, though, not because Scott didn't know where he was going until later on or something like that. Like, if we had been given the story in a comprehensive way, I'm sure that we'd know everything, but knowing everything would also have made us forget. The complexity, while making things basically impossible to solve, is what kept the series going and gave it so much longevity for 7 years. I mean, we're still trying to solve it now. And you can see some games trying to recreate it, like Poppy Playtime, for example. So, yeah, needless to say, even if accidental, great business model. Halfway through into number 5, Midnight Motorist. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin this game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside of Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, and then he goes home to his kids. He reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break a window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too, technically speaking at least. Anyone we encounter could be a serial killer. And that's a horrific thought. And at 4, 87 days. 87 days. FNAF 1's release started a whole cascade of events that would later go on to haunt my dreams and my life. However, before there were many, there were the two. The first 2 FNAF games to be exact. And they are some of the most crucial to the series, since this is when the story really started to be created. Moving on from just a couple of haunted animatronics that were somehow mad at you, to a mysterious killer indicated only by the color purple. Yet something more than the release of the second game happened on November 11, 2014 for the FNAF franchise, with this game releasing exactly 87 days after the 1st, a reference to the infamous bite of 87, referring to an animatronic incident occurring in 1987 revealed to us via newspaper articles in the first game. Basically, someone's frontal lobe got removed by an animatronic. We still don't know which animatronic actually. This was the start of a larger hunt for lore. This one Easter egg of 87 days between the two games made us ready for whatever convoluted source code editing, file name searching crap we had to deal with. And honestly, I don't know if I regret it or not. Like, I haven't decided. Let's see if I keep having nightmares, and then I can make it official. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, worst ending. I think it's safe to say that the worst ending is one of the scariest moments in this series, especially in Security Breach. This ending just has you leave the Pizzaplex at 6 AM through the front doors. However, this is labeled as the worst ending for a very good reason, since after escaping, Gregory obviously runs away from the Pizzaplex, but he doesn't seem to go to any house. Instead, he finds a cardboard box in an alleyway and then uses newspapers talking about the children who have gone missing at the Pizzaplex as a blanket. It's also worth noting that one of the silhouettes looks an awful lot like him. It's in the bottom left-hand corner. But it doesn't seem to matter though, since a red light comes on and we see Vanny's shadow appear behind us, or I guess in front of us. She finally got to us, which is really weird since, you know, we're in a seemingly random alley. So how did she find us? And how did she leave the Pizzaplex? With like the costume on and like a knife in her hand. Nobody was suspicious of that, even though like 9 kids have gone missing here? Fazbear Entertainment has some serious splaining to do. And ultimately, in at number 2, PlayStation events. The latest game in the FNAF series, Security Breach, had a lot of traction even before being announced. Everyone was eagerly and impatiently waiting for the next game that would no doubt explain what happens to Glitch Trap in his story. And while it took a couple years, the game would eventually come out. But before it did, it was featured at PlayStation events due to being a PlayStation exclusive until February of 2022. However, the beauty of this, and the reason it's on this list, is because of just how far it's come. The series has come such a long way, so seeing it featured with God of War, Battlefield, and so many other huge franchises really makes you see how big FNAF has gotten, especially since it started as a point-and-click survival horror game from a wannabe game designer who was giving it one last shot. It's incredible how life puts things together sometimes, and honestly, it's crazy how much FNAF has impacted everyone's lives. Without FNAF, so much of my life would be different. I mean, like, who knows? I wouldn't have had that section in like my grade 10 trauma exam. I would have replaced it with something else, which could have led to a whole different experience for the next 2 years. Plus, there wouldn't be a picture of me as Golden Freddy in what is probably the most haunting thing from my high school experience, and that's saying a lot, trust me. So yeah. And finally, in at number 1, Security Breach. The release of Security Breach on December 16, 2021 was probably the biggest moment the series has had so far, with the game being featured alongside iconic series as previously mentioned. Plus, the amount of hype for this game, and channels that I didn't even know knew what FNAF was, still managed to play Security Breach. This game launch has been so huge, and FNAF as a series has just come such a long way from being point-and-click survival. So just as Fazbear Entertainment has grown, so has the series and Scott himself, able to release bigger and better games than ever before, especially this one of the most anticipated gaming sequels like ever, at least based on search statistics. And while the game may have been delayed, it was delayed so that they could make it even bigger and better, and they've made an incredible game, aside from all the glitches. With 9 games in the series, honestly, they could end it here and still provide countless people with pleasant memories and this channel with more content. It's been an incredible ride and incredible to watch. The first game released the summer after my freshman year of high school, and for 7 years I've grown along with this series. And there's really very few games like that, and I think that's what makes FNAF so special.
Number 10, the vent story. In Sister Location, we learn of the fate of someone else who crawled through the vents previous to us. And surprise, surprise, it's not good. It's not a good fate. The thing that I think makes this moment so dark is the levity that it's given in its retelling. As we crawl through the vents, it's an angsty teenage voiced hand unit that offers to tell us a funny story. The story goes that a dead body was once found in the vent that we are in. Hand unit admits the story isn't that funny, but falls back on the fact that, hey, it was a story. As you are in the vent, the fact that there is no sympathy for the dead body or any explanation of how or when it was found just kinda adds to the darkness and the horror of this moment. Number 9, the final call. In the first FNAF game, our final call sounds like a demon picked up the phone to call you. Gone, of course, is the reassuring voice of Phone Guy, as he has his own problems to deal with after Night 4. However, that makes us wonder who exactly is calling you here, and what is it that they are trying to say. Some fans have theories on this, but no one seems to be able to fully agree on just what could be being said here, if anything. The only thing I think we can all agree on is how creepy this phone call is. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show it by giving this video a thumbs up. And be sure to check out our FNAF playlist for even more FNAF videos. Number 8. Say hi to Ballora. These mini-renas though, they really just get me. Why are they so creepy looking? How is this a thing when Ballora is made to look so pretty and so nice, and yet her mini-renas literally appear as though they were just designed to be straight nightmare fuel. In Sister Location, part of our job is making sure that the animatronic performers are on their stages, practicing and ready to perform whenever they are called upon next. If they are not on the stage, we are meant to give them a controlled shock to encourage them to come out so that we can see them. For Ballora, there is one night where we do not do this, as she appears on her stage willingly. Well, not really willingly, more in pieces, which are paraded in front of us by her mini-renas, who hold up her disassembled body. The whole moment is dark and disturbing and makes us wonder what happened to her and if the mini-renas tore her apart. Of course, there is something much bigger going on when it comes to Ballora's state in regards to the greater story in this game, but we don't know about all of that just yet, so instead, we just get creeped out.
And it's 7 wall tiles. FNAF 3 is a trippy game to say the least. With multiple different endings and a load of puzzles along the way, the supposed to be final game of the series takes some weird turns. But I think the most egregious offense is the freaking goddamn wall tiles. Why do you have to dial in a phone number on some panels in the wall in order to set souls of dead kids free? Like, what? Where did that come from, and why is nobody questioning this anymore? Like, the other games came out and we just forgot about this. Was it because the series was meant to be a dream but isn't anymore? Like, is it because William had left some weird security pad behind these tiles? Is it not real at all and we're just tripping balls? Because honestly, with the amount of hallucinations and fear we have, not to mention any sleep deprivation that could also be happening, it's entirely plausible that this just isn't real at all, and that these wall tiles, special minigames, and shadow Bonnie action figures we do see are just a result of multiple different issues. That, or it's the reason William started killing. Because, like, WTF.
Number 6. Step Closer. I love the Fazbear Frights books. They just add a whole lot of creepy moments to the franchise and even provide us with some of the darkest stories overall. Step Closer is the title story of the 4th Fazbear Frights book, which shares its name. In this story, we learn how Pete, the older brother of Chuck, ends up being cursed by Foxy after visiting Freddy's and attempting to tease his younger brother. Foxy's song that he sings stays with Pete, and it's believed that the curse that Foxy placed upon him through that song is causing his eye and his arm to constantly be thrust into dangerous situations. Pete figures out how to cure himself of the curse and decides to make things right, but is killed before this can happen. In the end, despite being dead, Pete is somehow seemingly still awake and within his body, and is able to witness as his hand and eye are removed, as they are needed for another patient, and Pete is listed as an organ donor.
Halfway through into number 5, FNAF AR. I've said it before and I will say it a million more times. Why is the company sending out animatronics that they know are dangerous? The whole point of FNAF AR is that the company is sending these animatronics to try and rebuild their reputation. Same thing with Help Wanted. But then they see that they're infected with a virus turning them hostile, but instead of recalling them like any normal company, they send out more animatronics, including multiple versions of the killer that caused them to lose their reputation in the first place. They did not think that it was just an older Bonnie model and decided to call it Springtrap. If that was the case, it would be listed in AR as Old Bonnie or Spring Bonnie, not Springtrap. They know exactly what they're doing and nobody has called them out yet. Companies will get in trouble for making a freaking tiny mistake in their game, but this company can get away with just letting people die? That's sus as hell. Purple is sus.
Number 4. Room for One More. Still one of the most horrifying and haunting stories that we have received so far from the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise comes, for me, once again, from the Fazbear Frights books. The 1:35 a.m. story Room for One More is such a disturbing story that I cannot ever forget it. It really just stays with me. It recounts the tale of Stanley, a security guard who works at an underground facility, likely Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, and can't help falling asleep on the job because, well, he works nights. Many mini-arenas always come to visit him to ask if he will take them home with him, and he agrees to do so, but whenever he wakes up, they're seemingly gone. Oh well. We learn that what has really been happening is that they have been crawling into his body while he was asleep, making Stanley feel more and more unwell as the story goes on. But he doesn't realize why until the very end, when he actually witnesses one mini-arena crawling inside him as he screams after she asks him if he has room for one more.
In a 3 business expansion, when a company undergoes a tragedy like 5 missing children, you can usually assume that they're either going under or will never be the same. This would go for any company, but especially a company directed at kids. Like if Chuck E. Cheese actually had this happen, nobody would be taking their kids there. But for some reason, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has not only been able to keep their doors open, but make them bigger, opening an entire shopping mall based on their characters. What the, like, how the actual hell did this happen? From having to shut down at the end of basically every FNAF game, to opening an entire mall-sized pizzaplex that has even more opportunities for your kids to get lost in? What the ever-loving crap happened to make that work? This has to be the most ridiculous form of logic in this series. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't care how many comments say that they would love a real FNAF. If it was actually real and there were actual deaths, you'd be scared crapless to go there. You wouldn't actually go unless you were an adult with no kids or a YouTuber trying to put together the mystery of what really happened and to see if their pizza is recycled.
Number 2. Death of Crying Child. I think this was also one of the most shocking moments for me in this game, especially in FNAF 3, and especially given what happens before even this moment. Crying Child is afraid of the animatronics at Freddy's, but despite this, his brother, Foxy Bro, possibly Michael Afton, and his brother's friends take him to see the animatronics up close. Great. They are doing this obviously because they enjoy tormenting this poor kid who just wants to stay at a safe distance away, and maybe doesn't even want to be there. That whole part is a little confusing to me based on the toys that the Crying Child owns. It seems as though they actually might be a Freddy's fan, but maybe it's just the animatronics and not the character's overall brand that they have a problem with. They get up close and push Crying Child towards the animatronics, forcing him to give the animatronic a big kiss. However, Crying Child's head then becomes stuck inside the mouth of said animatronic and then is shown being crushed after it malfunctions. Despite the 8-bit graphics, this moment is shocking and haunting. Like I said, these 8-bit graphic scenes are just a lot. Number 1. Death of Elizabeth. A lot of the darkest moments in my mind come from one of my favorite games in the franchise, Sister Location. I mean, maybe that's part of the reason that I love it so much. I do like dark things. The death of Elizabeth is definitely one of the darkest moments out there. I especially love the eerie monologue we get from Circus Baby surrounding it, explaining how she lured Elizabeth away from the group using ice cream and was seemingly unaware of what was going on or why exactly it happened, as though it were part of Circus Baby's programming to kill Elizabeth, devouring her and trapping her soul within the animatronic. Time for an honorable mention. Honorable mention. Another dark moment that I love actually comes from the first game and isn't so much an event that happens within the story as just a recurring game mechanic moment, if you will. Just Foxy in general in that game just creeps me out in the best possible way, whether it be him peeking out from behind the curtain or sprinting towards you or just hearing him banging on the door. Foxy has a lot of dark and terrifying moments that always startle me and threaten to linger behind in my thoughts, especially whenever I find myself staring at a closed curtain somewhere.
In a 10, don't run. What do you do if a group of bad guys is coming after you at a good pace and you have no way to defend yourself? You get the hell out of there faster than my dad trying to get milk, faster than William's wife left him, faster than me going outside when someone asks if I want to get Taco Bell. The fact that we're in this tiny office is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Like, honestly, why would we stay in this room when we see on the security cameras that the animatronics aren't nearby? We can just like book it and be safe. Like, why isn't there a one-way emergency exit out of our office if this is such a hazard? We stay in this room and that wouldn't happen in real life if you were in any sort of actual danger. In Game Lab, MatPat's old YouTube Red series, we saw him take on a real FNAF experience. However, when the animatronics were close, he didn't run away, he stayed in the office. Which could be used to say that since we consider that our safe space, we would do the same. But if our life was actually in danger, like mortal danger, we are gonna die danger, we would run like the wind and not work there for 7 days before getting fired. Then at 9, animatronics. Now, ignoring the whole possession thing, since that still isn't real, I've seen no evidence of it, especially due to intense agony, the whole servos locking up so we need to let them roam free at night thing is complete and utter BS. Firstly, in a world where we can have shape-shifting animatronics and discs that emit such high-frequency sounds that they alter what we see, I'm supposed to believe that a servo motor is going to lock up? Secondly, why do they need to free roam in the first place? They just stand on a stage. A servo motor creates linear or circular motion, which is not the kind of movement the animatronics need. I mean, it could be, but if these are so complex that they can move on their own, why would they lock in the first place? Not to mention the whole, yeah, someone got bit on the head so we're gonna stop making them roam around freely. Like, why would you do that in the first place? Or the fact that kids literally tear Mangle to bits and then put her back together. Ironically, because, you know, put you back together. But still, it makes no sense. Before I continue on, can you do me a huge favor and hit that like button if you're enjoying the video or just the channel in general? And feel free to share this with a friend if you're so inclined. It really helps us out against the algorithm and lets us know what you want to see more of. And you know, helps me keep my job. Thank you. And at 8, technology. Speaking of animatronics, what is up with the technology in this world? They're so advanced, but at the same time, they have the same tech that they would have in that era. The illusion discs are already crazy overpowered. Like, life is a perfectly balanced game with absolutely no exploits, but those things are absolutely nuts. And then there's the Funtime animatronics, where Baby literally stores a claw in her stomach and can capture children, and their AI is so advanced that Ballora can talk, and she isn't really possessed. Unless we go off the FNAF novels, and even if we did, it's from 5 different kids, so they would just be gargling. And the animatronics' ability to free roam is incredible. They were doing this before they got possessed as well, so their AI is incredibly advanced. Yet for some reason they don't have smartphones or better computers. Like NASA would be interested in the AI of these animatronics, so why is there other pieces of technology that are the same as they would normally be in that era? It makes no sense to me.
Number 7, Springtrap's fate. Or really, William's fate, I guess? In Five Nights at Freddy's 3, there is a little cutscene via the minigames that we unlock where we learn of why Springtrap looks so gnarly. You end up finding him surrounded by ghosts and see as he attempts to disguise himself in the spring lock suit, only to have those locks malfunction and have him get impaled by all the screws and parts within that suit as it all suddenly releases. These little mini games and cutscenes always have the best bits of lore, but generally also give us the most disturbing scenarios and creepy stories, all in 8-bit. What's more, I love that although Springtrap is the villain here, the ghosts actually feel really malevolent. And I know they're just like innocent little ghosts, but I'm also like, you guys kind of seem sinister here. I like it.
And at 6, limited power. The original difficulty of this game comes from the fact that you have limited power, at least in FNAF 1. This adds stakes since you can't just keep your doors closed the whole time and you can't just keep the lights on outside. And it's explained to us, and just flat out told to us in the survival logbook, that the building has limited power after 12 AM. Why? That makes no sense. Absolutely none. Why would a building have restricted power after midnight? I've never heard of that before. And unless the franchise owner is extremely cheap and doesn't want more of an electricity bill, there would be no reason to set up a system that cuts you off. Plus, if that's the case, why risk a more costly lawsuit in that case if someone does get hurt or dies because of the limited power? Even if you won and didn't have to pay, you still have to pay the lawyer fees, because by no means would any judge make someone who got injured at work pay for the company's fees. At least I'd hope not. Especially when the game takes place.
Number 5, Phone Guy's farewell. The final phone call that you do manage to get from Phone Guy in FNAF 1 comes through on night 4. This phone call is pretty dark, as with it we are able to piece together what may have happened to our helpful friend who has been guiding us through our first week with pre-recorded messages from what we assume must have been his final week on the job. This phone call, however, seems to imply that Phone Guy never got to finish out this week, as on night 4 he was attacked by the animatronics after likely running out of power. All we can hear is his voice somewhat frantic but attempting to hold it together as he asks us to check the suits maybe in the back room for him, as he plans on hiding out there before he is interrupted by Freddy's music and what sounds like an animatronic jump scare.
And at 4, business deals. The people behind the Fazbear Entertainment Company, whether it be some board of directors or William Afton, aren't the brightest bunch. The ideas are there, but they're not executed well. Why the living hell would hiring someone to make games about the tragedies that took place in your restaurants ever seem like a good idea? That shouldn't have worked in the slightest. The main concept of using a game to make fun of the deaths of kids is already pretty messed up. And while it seems to have worked in the FNAF universe, why did they ever try it? Those events now will never be lost in time. Those games are there forever. And if they're as popular as the games are in our world, there are people who made whole YouTube channels about the series. At least when YouTube comes out. When does YouTube come out in this world? Like, I know one kid said MatPat's line in one of the Fazbear Frights books, and then the book said, as his favorite YouTuber says, but like, when did that story take place? After 2005, or was YouTube around earlier in this timeline? Because if it is, am I still the host on Top 10 Gaming? I kinda wanna be canon in FNAF 2.
Number 3. Hangman. The fate of the workers in the lore and stories is really what gets me while in the game, because you yourself as the protagonist are meant to be a worker at this place. In Sister Location, not only do we have the strangely brief and nondescriptive story of the dead body in the vent, but we also get a moment when on the last night no animatronics appear to be on their stage. Instead, Hand Unit believes they are there when we shine the light on the stages because of the presence of something much darker and awful there. That is 2 dead bodies which appear to be hanging from the rooftop of both of the stage areas. These bodies are likely the workers who you have been told stayed well past their shift end and have not yet left. Turns out they couldn't leave because they were too busy being dead. They're just hanging around.
Penultimately in a number 2 investigation. Speaking of trying to find out what really happened, why didn't the cops? We know that there was an investigation thanks to the Midnight Motorist minigame from FNAF 6, but they never found the bodies, even though the animatronics smelt like death and were oozing mucus and blood. So much that they had to actually shut down according to the FNAF 1 news clippings. So what gives? Why did they close their investigation so quickly? Or why didn't they look into the suits when it was reported that they were leaking blood? I don't care if it's the 80s and the police don't have the tech they do now. If a place you were investigating missing people but found no bodies had something that is leaking blood, you go check that shit out. You don't just leave it behind and say, that can't be related. Who the hell thinks like that? It's so disgusting to me, and honestly, even though it's a game that has to have a reason to continue, they should have done more. I get that if they had found the bodies, we wouldn't have gotten so many games, but sometimes it's quality over quantity. Guess they had to meet their arrest quota for the month or something, so they just dropped this case like it was cold. Finally, in at number 1, doors! You knew this was going to be on the list. I hate the goddamn mother-loving doors in this game. Why do they open when the power is out? That makes no sense. Even if it's an electromagnet, like everyone keeps saying in the comments whenever I bring this up, those require power to turn on. So if anything, it would be costing power to keep the doors open rather than closed. Gravity doesn't work in reverse. If the magnet is off, the door would just fall down. I get that it's supposed to be for gameplay purposes, but what in this universe makes this make sense? There is no conceivable way that these doors should be working in that way, but they do. They do, and it makes me mad. Why do you do this to me? Sky Daddy Scott, why? I really want merch that says Sky Daddy Scott though, for real. That would be hilarious. Just like Scott's avatar on like a cloud. Yes.